Well, I guess from this point on, then anything that you say can be used against you.
All right. Sounds good.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a podcast for creative people. I'm your host, Christopher Talon. I'm a writer and a musician. I made this music you're listening to. Wow. And I also wrote the book Switchers. I have a new book coming out soon. Check out my website, ChristopherTalon.com. Check me out on social media at TalonWrites to learn all about that, when the new book will come out, how you can get it, all those kinds of things. A little bit of housekeeping here. I was supposed to have this episode out yesterday, and I got everything done except for this part where I'm talking right now. And then I got a phone call that my kid was hit by a car, so I wasn't able to finish the podcast yesterday and get it out. I laugh because she's okay. She's no broken bones or anything like that, just sore. So I apologize for coming out a day later than I promoted on social media. And that's it for that. Now let's talk about today's show, huh? I spoke with Alex Anest. Alex is an Ann Arbor, Michigan-based guitar player and guitar teacher. He is currently playing with his jazz band, doing a tour. They've got dates in Michigan in December and January. He's got dates in Indiana and Ohio and Pennsylvania in January, and then January 31st back in Michigan and Livonia. So I'll have a link up to his calendar. Please check that out, see if you got a show coming up near you. I'll be at his December 3rd show at Moriarty's in Lansing. So if you're in the area, come on through. All right, so Alex talks about his musical influences, growing up with music. We talk about some of the people who have shaped modern music, some of the more well-known and some of the lesser-known, and his creative process, vibing with the crowd, interacting with his collaborators, all that kind of stuff. It's a fun one. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Maybe you can take something from it to add to your creative repertoire. So, yeah, that's all I got to say about it. Let's get right into it. Here is my conversation with guitarist Alex Anest.
So I guess I'll start by sharing a little story for the listeners. I think I heard you on the radio, looked you up online, and sent you a message, and then we ended up talking a little bit. I got your record, you got my book, and I've really enjoyed that record, and I've actually been sharing it with other people. So if you go downtown Grand Rapids to Grammatones, those guys will all be very well versed with with your music. That was the first place I went when I got that record, and listened to it with a couple of my buddies down there.
Thank you for doing that. That was exciting to hear, because it's really gratifying to know that people are like getting together and listening to records in general, but to know it was my record that people were listening to. You know, when I put out volume 1 of that record, of that series, it was during COVID, during lockdown. And instead of doing an album release show, we did a listening party. So we just were online, and I had to figure out how to do that. But we basically went online and we listened to the record together and then talked about it, and had, there were some question and answer time, and it was fun.
Yeah. That seems like that would go over better for music. I've talked to a couple of stand-up comedians who said that during COVID, they were doing stand-up like in this format, like on a Zoom format with people, and it just doesn't hit the same. Jokes don't. But I think people listen to music already. They listen to it on the computer, they listen to it in their headphones, they listen to it in the car. I think people are just set up to receive music better.
Yeah.
I started out playing the cello in 5th grade strings, but it wasn't enough movement. I started playing the drums, and then at some point, being the drummer, all the guitarists would leave their stuff at my house.
Of course.
And my first time really picking up and playing a guitar was picking up our guitar players' guitars when they would leave them over and try to figure out like how to play bar chords. How did you end up playing the guitar? Was it something that you come from a musical family? You sought it out on your own?
When I was a kid, my dad was my dad has always been a highly skilled professional woodworker, but he wanted to be a recording engineer. So he went to recording engineer school. And basically, because he was already a carpenter, he ended up building recording studios because he had this knowledge of how studios should be built. And my parents were really young when they had me. They were only 20. So when I was like 5 or 6, they were 25. And they would have bands come and practice in our living room. So, I would come home from school and there'd be a drum set in my living room, and my sister and I would bang on the drums all the time. And I wanted to be a guitar player for as long as I can remember, because music was in my house all the time.
Yeah.
So, not just the bands practicing, but my dad had, a couple thousand records. He was kind of a record collector. He was always having people over. Basically, my dad was like, it was like the early 80s. So my dad was basically a stoner with a lot of records. And I just gravitated to the guitar. It seemed like the cool instrument, and I started playing when I was about 7.
Oh, wow. It seems like people that do anything when they started at that age, when you're still really kind of learning everything, it just, I don't know, man. I see guys play, I see like you play and just how smooth you are. And I'm like, this guy's been doing this for a long time. This isn't just somebody who practiced for, a couple of months for a lot of hours. This is somebody who's been doing this almost as long as they've been talking.
Yeah. Well, when you've been doing it for your whole life, it does become like, it's just part of your daily living, I'm in my office, I'm surrounded by guitars, I can reach out my arm and touch a guitar. So, you can too. Nice. You got a bass right there. I love it.
Yeah. I got just a fun little short neck bass. I don't do any live gigging with it. I'd be embarrassed. It's so small.
Oh, that's the best kind of bass for me. I don't like to play a big bass. I also try to avoid playing bass because once you play bass, people hire you to play bass.
Then you're a bass player. Yeah.
Then you're a bass player. Even if you're not that good at it, you're a bass player.
Yep. Paul McCartney was never a bass player until he said, I can play bass this one show.
Yeah. Yeah. So I try to avoid that by never playing the bass.
Yeah. There's actually been a lot of good guitar players who just got stuck with the bass because they either flipped a coin or the other guitar player was just a little bit better. What's his name from Rush? Geddy Lee. He wanted to be the guitar player, but the other dude was just a little better. He's like, fine.
Alex Lifeson. All right. Yeah. That's funny. I didn't know that. But, then they, the bass, to be good at the bass, to be more than just a guitar player who plays bass, that's a whole nother path. So once you're on that path,
Yeah. Guys like Paul McCartney and Geddy Lee, they play such intricate bass parts. It's not just doom 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 doom. It's doom 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 doom, and they sing at the same time over it. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, and Paul McCartney, like whenever anybody talks about Paul, I always want to mention James Jamerson because he's from Detroit, and I feel like he's the sort of the biggest influence in Paul McCartney's bass lines. Once you start listening to some of those Motown bass lines, you really hear that.
Nobody does bass lines better than Motown. Like, I know it's kind of kids music, bubblegum music, but all those Jackson 5 songs, they have really, really fun, playful bass lines. I
love those bass lines.
Yeah. I pick up that bass a lot and just start playing I Want You Back on the bass just because it's so much fun.
Yeah, I play, when I'm not doing my organ trio thing.
Yeah.
I do, I play weddings and stuff in a cover band. And I love playing I Want You Back, even though most of the time I'm just playing an octave, like, ba, ba, da, 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 the whole time.
Yeah.
Really dig that. That's fun stuff. But most of that Motown stuff is James Jamerson. That's like almost all him. He played on everything.
I'm glad you told me that because it sounds like it's a guy that plays the same guy playing all through those songs.
Yeah. No, I don't know about I don't think it's him on the Jackson 5 records, but like the early Motown stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They basically, there's a really good documentary about the musicians who played on all the Motown stuff. It's called Standing in the Shadows of Motown. It's been out for probably 25 years now, but basically it was one group of musicians who played on like, you know, everything, because all the bands or all the artists, all the Motown artists were singers, right?
Yeah.
You know, and when they go and play live, they would just use whatever, like I'm not sure who they used, but basically the guys who recorded the records, they would just, you know, it was always the same guitarists, same drummers, same bass players.
Yeah. Same way with a lot of that good music that was coming out of LA in the 60s with the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, this is the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. The in Detroit they called themselves the Funk Brothers.
The Funk Brothers. I like that.
Yeah. So the Funk Brothers were like the Wrecking Crew of Detroit, basically.
Yeah.
No, I'm in Michigan, so the Wrecking Crew was like the Funk Brothers of LA.
That's right. Well, man, I was going to ask you what some of your earlier influences were playing the guitar, but when you're around that much music, talking about all the records that your dad had and just different bands coming in, is it easy to pin down who your influences were? Like, did you have specific people that you tried to mimic kind of on guitar early on?
Oh, well, I mean, you know, honestly, when I was a kid, it was definitely the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a cassette deck in my room, and my dad would let me like dub records onto a cassette so I could listen to them in my room.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you know, my main early influence was like Beatles and other like classic rock, whatever, you know, I loved a lot of. So my first guitar heroes, though, my 2 first guitar heroes would have been Billy Zoom from X, because in the early 80s, X was like just breaking out of the LA scene.
Okay.
And so they were talked about a lot, and that was a punk band. I was really into that. And also Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats.
Oh, sure.
I mean, Stray Cats, like, especially when you're like a kid, like, you know, music videos had, you know, MTV didn't quite exist yet. You know, MTV was like 82, 83, but you could watch videos on TV. Like there was some sort of like 15 or 20 minute segment that they would show videos. I don't remember what it was called, but, you know, the Stray Cats were such a cartoony band. I love the Stray Cats, but like, you know, they looked like they were like a cartoon version of the 50s, right?
Yeah.
And so for a kid, it was like, yeah, this is really cool, you know. I feel like when you're a kid, songs that mention animals are always, you know, Octopus's Garden, Stray Cats Strut, you know. So I was like really into that kind of stuff. And then I didn't get into jazz until I was in high school, basically, you know.
Okay.
I didn't really grow up listening to jazz.
Did you play in the jazz band in high school, or was it just kind of your ear was starting to become more refined?
You know, I didn't really understand the sort of like the cultural history of jazz for a long time. It was more like when you're good at the guitar, people start saying, oh, you know, you could play jazz because this is quote unquote advanced music, you know?
Right, yeah.
It turns out it's just music, you know? And it's not about showing off your skills. It's about expression, just like all other music is.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Well, every now and then you get a chance to show off your skills a little.
Sure. But, you know, like my relationship to that has changed over the years to where it's like, you know, it's about, for me, it's about having an experience, an interactive experience with the other musicians and the audience. Right. So, you know, the longer I play, the less I feel like I have to demonstrate anything.
Yeah.
You know, like when I was in school, you're always in demonstration mode, right? Like it's like, oh, I learned this tune. I know how to play this tune. I can improvise on this tune, and I can play something that's quote cool on this tune. And eventually you're just done with that.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And so ever since I've been done with that, I've been feeling a lot better about playing because it's just more interactive and more fun.
Yeah.
And
that's got to free you somehow too. Like, I mean, I think of guys like Eric Clapton and Billy Gibbons. Those are guys who, if they wanted to just show off that they can do stuff that you can't do, they could do that all day long. But they're more concerned with having the right sound, the right tone, and like you said, just kind of fitting into the song,
Yeah, I think musicians who are interested in that generally are more fun to listen to. And then their level of virtuosity is not the thing that you're listening to. So like, two guitarists that I really like are like Wes Montgomery and Grant Green, right? So Wes Montgomery is quite virtuosic. When I listen to Wes, I kind of feel like he's done everything that I'll ever attempt better than I will ever be able to do it. It's just mind blowing. When I listen to Grant Green, I'm like, oh, I could do that. I could play that thing that he played, but I love both of them because it's not about their level of virtuosity that it's like their musicality. They both have incredible musicality.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And there's definitely in the jazz world, we listen to a lot of virtuosic players, but I feel like the ones that we really love, it's not necessarily about that. It's about their ability to be expressive.
Yeah.
And when I was first listening to jazz, when I first listened to Charlie Parker, the first time I listened to Charlie Parker, it didn't make any sense to me at all. And I was really into like blues, like early rural blues, Robert Johnson and Charlie Patton and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I would listen to Charlie Parker and I couldn't hear the blues connection in it. It didn't make sense. It didn't sound like soulful to me in any way. But then later I would listen back to Charlie Parker and be like, okay, yes, he's virtuosic, but now I can hear the expressiveness in his playing and like the dynamic control and the blues sound. Like, it wasn't his playing that was lacking expressiveness. It was my ability to sort of like get into something a little bit more like maybe more technically sophisticated, but still rooted in, this idea that there's a person behind that melody that is saying something. So.
Yeah. Well, that's funny too, because I was just thinking about the other day, somebody was saying that in order to know that you're not good at something, you need to first have the skills that it takes to be good at that thing. And so, I mean, not to say that you're not good. That's not what I mean. But like, just the more you play, the more you go, okay, I'm tired of that. What else can I play? How else can I do this? And then you've kind of built up those skills in yourself and for what you're trying to listen for and what you're trying to play. And then you realize what's good when you see it.
Yeah. And you learn how to say, do I need this? Like you have a vast amount of potential like ideas that you could employ at any moment. And then the question is, do I need this? So like the last tune I wrote was a really simple blues tune. Like in the jazz, the form is a 12-bar blues. It's a minor blues. And it's really hard for me not to throw some clever thing into a tune when I'm writing. And so, I wrote the melody. It was really basic. Like I could teach any of my students how to play this melody. And then, I started, tinkering with it and like, oh, what if I do this? Oh, what if I change this chord this way? And I ended up with something pretty sophisticated. And then I was like, wait, this tune doesn't need any of that.
Yeah.
And I actually performed it once with some alternative chord changes like that I had written for it. And then after that, I was just like, I'm going to make this the most basic tune that I have written lately, because it doesn't need any of those things. And so I brought it back to just being a really basic blues tune. And, I like to have a tune like that to start sets anyways. So, oftentimes I will start a gig with Chitlins con Carne, which is
that's the first song on the record, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just such a basic blues tune, I use that tune a lot, but I was like, well, I can use my own tune now that I've written. I don't always have to start with Chitlins, because this tune is just as simple. And if you listen to Chitlins, it's very basic. There's not a lot to it. And so that's a great way for me. That's a great way to start a set, because I really put a lot of value on connecting with the audience and being relaxed and keeping my bandmates relaxed. Like, I don't like to vibe people out on stage anymore now that I'm older. And I just really want everybody to be able to kind of get into it, and not have some super complicated tune to start, so that you just are off running.
Yeah.
And dropping the ball all the time, right? We're on stage for 2 45-minute sets, or 2 50-minute sets, or sometimes 2 75-minute sets, and you're going to be tired by the end.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a marathon, but
you'll be sweaty, your hand's going to be cramped. Yeah.
Yeah, you're working, and you're focused on there's so much to be aware of during that time period. How am I interacting with the drummer? How am I interacting with the organ player? Are we connecting? Is the audience connected to us? And so you're juggling a lot. So I very much like to make sure that when I start, everything is chill.
Yeah.
So
I like that. And, just that little bit that you were talking about, your creative process there, I noticed a lot of parallels to writing too, because you were saying, try to just strip it down, get it to its most basic thing, and then you can kind of tinker and add to it. And that, I would say the exact same thing to musicians and writers. Start simple, and you can always get to a certain point and go, oh, you know what? If I do this in the beginning, then I can string that along and turn it into this later on. But yeah,
yep, exactly.
when you try to get really crazy and complicated right off the bat, it just doesn't really give you a lot to play with.
Right. Yeah. And even in, I'm currently doing a lot of jazz, and that's kind of been my main thing for most of my professional life. But I've played in a lot of bands. I love playing in bands.
Yeah.
Rock bands. And
what was the band I saw you posted a clip from? It sounded like a very frenetic, punk ska band. And it had a female singer.
Cat Stye and the Ferals. That's an incredibly fun band. It's really good.
I was shocked when I saw that, because I was like, I guess I had it in my head that you were just kind of like a through and through jazz guy, more highbrow musically kind of. And then I saw you playing that, and I was like, yeah, rock out, dude.
No, I'm not a highbrow person, and I feel like I feel like my it's just finding how you there's a lot of, we all have a lot inside of us, right? Yeah. And if we're artists, then we've chosen a way to express, we've chosen a medium that we want to use.
Yeah.
And I think we're lucky because we get to express things that are difficult to express just with language, or in your case as a writer, you get to explore expressing things with language in a deeper way, you know? So, you know, I'm a horrible purist. I've never been a good purist. When I play jazz, I'm always, you know, I bring effects. Sometimes I use unusual sounds, you know. I like noise. I like chaos, you know. I like order, you know. I like a lot of different things. And so I've found that I need to be doing multiple projects. But as a band leader, I can only really sustain one thing, you know, like,
right.
So, you know, I'm not the band leader in Kat's band. I'm her guitar player. But she does, you know, we do, like, there's a lot of collaboration. You know, we bounce ideas off of each other a lot, and we work together. And a lot of those songs that she sings were, she and the bass player, Sam, really worked together on getting the sort of arrangements happening. So, but yeah, that's a really fun band. It's quite loud and chaotic at times. And, you know.
Yeah. Versus your normal kind of like blissful, soulful face that you've got when you're playing jazz. This one's like,
yeah,
it's a lip biter bouncing up and down kind of thing. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. But actually those two things, all of that, like, again, the way that I am on stage with Kat is, and the way that I am on stage with my organ trio, I think is consistent in the fact that, what I'm trying to do is make sure that, like, that everyone's engaged all the time. Yeah. You know, like, I don't.
Well, there's a lot of freedom in the guitar because it's not the rhythm section and it's not the singer. So it kind of gives you a lot of freedom to, like, float and play around with everything else that's happening around you.
Right. Yeah. And I just don't want to look like, you know, when I'm on stage with Kat is very energetic, and I don't want to just look like I'm just kind of there playing guitar, like, because I don't want it's really important that the audience is with us at all points, because if you're just slamming the audience with a ton of volume and noise and they're not ready for it, it's like tragic. Like, everybody's just like, I feel like it's like being at a restaurant and somebody says something really crappy and you can't leave the table or something, you know, like, you're just stuck. Like, I can't get out of here, you know, like, whatever you're doing, I guess what it is whatever you're doing on stage, whatever it is you're doing on stage, you have to be committed to doing it. Like, you're there, you've chosen to be there, right? So the same thing goes for when I'm playing, you know, when I'm playing in the organ trio. If something is falling apart, like, if something is starting to go wrong, like, I'm there on stage. I'm committed to being on stage right now. I have to work through this difficulty in front of people. Yeah. So I'm not going to change my face to make it look like I'm upset or angry. I'm going to, like, you know, I'm going to change my posture to, like, move towards the drummer and, like, reconnect us. And I'm going to do it in a way where, like, you know, we just get back on the track and then we're back with the crowd. So, you know, and I just think that's important, just to be, you know, even if you're not doing jazz, music is very improvisational. I mean, you're always in this moment and you don't get redos, right? Like, you know, you're playing live. So what's happening right now is the entire thing. And when it's over, you know, it's over. That's it. You know, I mean, nowadays it's not over, because you know, whatever worst thing you possibly did is probably the time when somebody was like, oh, this is great, I'll just take this little video. And then you, like, start to suck right then. But, you know, the actual moment is a function of time, and it's gone as soon as it's there. So you really have to be, you know, I feel strongly that whole, like, intentionality piece is big with the type of art that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you can see it just in your body language that you're very in that moment.
Yeah. And that's exactly like, if I'm in the moment, then I can expect the audience to be in the moment.
Yeah.
But if I'm not in the moment, if I'm like thinking about what am I going to do on the next chorus, or, oh man, I messed up that last tune.
Or why isn't that person in the front row moving right now? And you're just focused on.
Right. Or like, like the intrusive thoughts, like, do I even belong on stage? Like, do I even know how to play guitar? What even is music? Like that kind of stuff. Like, if I let that stuff get in, then I can't really expect the audience to be with me because I'm not even engaged. If I'm not even engaged, then I have no right to expect the audience to be engaged.
Yeah.
So,
talent and hard work pays off, but so does confidence.
Confidence is great. I love it. And I have become a much more confident player over the years. But again, that confidence has come with not like I'm great at this instrument, but I'm an individual musician and I have a thing to say, and I'm definitely going to play guitar like me better than anyone else can play guitar like me.
Yeah. And that's, that pushes perfectly into the next thing I wanted to ask you about too, because in all of the different bands that I've heard you playing with, the guitar trio, the organ trio, you've got the quartet, you've got the Cats band, they're all different sounds, but like you can very much hear you in there. And I guess the biggest question I had was with all the different sounds, because even within jazz, some of them are a little bit more funky, some of them are a little bit more R&B. Do you feel like those sounds are all just in you waiting to come out, and like you're very intentionally trying to make those musical choices as far as like kind of like the genre bending, or does it just come out naturally with different people that you play with? Does that make sense? So I said that? Yeah,
no, it's a great question. It boils down to how do you express yourself and respect the music that you're playing at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So there's a level of stylistic. There's like personal integrity and stylistic integrity, right? So the stylistic integrity is, all right, I'm here playing this tune. Like a good example would be like you take a song like one I've been doing lately that I wrote with a friend of mine years ago called Vacuum, that's kind of like a funky blues, it's kind of stylistically, I feel like it calls for like some kind of fast stuff, like it needs to be kind of it needs to have like some bluesiness and some like quick 16th note kind of stuff happening in the tune. It's just like like I know that that's kind of a thing that I want to bring out when I play that song. But then the personal integrity part of it is like this will come out, especially when I'm playing for other people. I'm always thinking like, okay, they didn't just ask me to play guitar for them because they needed a guitar player, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody's like, I need a guitar player.
Maybe earlier on in your career there was some of that, but at this point, like, yeah.
Sure, right. But now if somebody wants me to play with them, then for their sake, I hope that they want me to play with them because they want me to play with them, because that's the only way I play now. Like I'm, but and so those two things seem like they're in sort of tension. Like, oh, well, if you call Alex, you get Alex, and that's like that. That doesn't mean that I just play whatever the hell I want and I won't listen to you.
You wanted me, man, so deal with it.
Right? No, that's not it at all. That's like what that means to me is, like. They want my means of expression, my way of expression, but I still need to be like, the reason they want that is because they heard me play a tune and they were like, oh, okay, he knows how to incorporate himself into this sound,
Yeah.
So lately, I think the past couple of years, I think the big test of this for me has been on ballads and slower tunes. I used to have a real hard time playing ballads because I couldn't really navigate the tunes very well. And eventually I realized that I have a huge amount of dynamic range and sort of density that I'm capable of in a ballad. I can play very quietly and like, that's okay. I can play silence. I can just stop playing for a moment. You play a phrase and then you just wait like what seems to you an interminable amount of time. Right. And what you're doing there is you're just giving the audience that moment of like, or even not even the audience, just yourself, that moment to process what it is you just played. Mm-hmm. And so, and I've played on ballads where like by the end, like we're just making tons of noise, like all of a sudden it just gets really loud and there's just a whole lot happening. And it's like, and then it comes right back down to almost nothing. So a good example of that would be Song for Edward is a recent tune that I've been playing a lot. I actually wrote it like probably almost 30 years ago, but it sat in a drawer for most of that time. And now it's been getting played. And, it's always quite dynamic in terms of like, how quiet and how loud it gets, and how dense it gets. So, I think that this is, it's less difficult the longer you play to sort of say, to kind of have your personality come through in your music. And, like your personality meaning, like I like stuff that's like humorous, I like to play humorous stuff at times. And like if it's overly clever, I'm not super into stuff that's clever for the sake of being clever, but like, sometimes stuff is funny. Yeah. And that's like, that's kind of cool, Yeah. Yeah. Expressiveness on the instrument has been a long time coming for me, I think. For a long time I played guitar pretty well, but I didn't really understand, or I didn't have a way of getting in access to some of the sort of emotive things that maybe I wanted to get at, or maybe I just didn't want to get at them until I got a little bit older and I changed my approach. Having a year with no gigs, and and also like doing the kind of stuff that I did during the first year of lockdown. I did a lot of street medic stuff. I was part of the Black Lives Matter movement in Detroit. I was doing a lot of stuff that had nothing to do with playing music, but had a lot to do with being in community and like caring for people. Yeah. And I couldn't gig at all. So I feel like, coming back to music after that, I have a ton of gratitude every time I'm on stage, and I feel like that comes through in my playing. Like, I'm really happy to be there. And I think that then the crowd is happy to be there too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if COVID was good for nothing else, I really do think there was a creative renaissance, and maybe being somebody who is the host of a podcast for creative people, I'm just looking too deep into it. But, people weren't able to play live. People weren't able to perform whatever kind of, comedic arts or whatever else. And then everybody got really introspective and was probably kind of like, what am I doing? Am I making the stuff I really want to make? All right, well, I've got whoever knows how long to just figure out who I am, what I'm doing.
Right. I mean, to me, like,
and then create a backlog of music.
Right. I mean, like, like 1 million people died and I didn't. So like, and there were times when I was doing the street medicing where like, I was in real physical danger. So like, it's like, just, it does change your perspective. And, like, I think that we all who survived COVID, like, we still haven't really talked about it. Like, and I don't know that we ever really will, because like, I mean, some people are talking about it, but like, it's pretty traumatic that amount of suffering. And, and some people are still, not recovered. Like people have long COVID. I've got friends who can't, they basically, their whole life is different now. So,
I've got a buddy who makes art out of clay, and he's been dealing with odd symptoms for like 3 years now. Right.
Yeah. So it just makes it, that really brings the gratitude into my life in general. And then of course, if you are really connected to like, if your art is connected to your personal, like sort of, I guess your journey in life, then that stuff is going to come out in what you do. You know? So if it's not just, if it's not just a commodity, which I guess there's artists out there for whom it's just a commodity, but like, I don't understand that because like, if I wanted to make a ton of money, I just wouldn't be an artist.
Well, I definitely see that with people that write books. I know people that have a very like, yes, it's art, but it's a business first kind of a mindset. And they're like, I try to make my covers look like the covers that sell. I try to write content like the content that sells. And I'm just sitting there like, I hired a guy that's never made a book cover before just because I really liked his online graphic art. And you know what I mean? And I wrote a
cover.
Yeah. I thought so too. Thank you. And wrote something that was very personal to me that I thought, I don't know if anybody's going to like this. It's semi-autobiographical, and that might just completely miss. But I think the people that read it connected with it more so than they would just a very, just like a very procedural crime book or something like that,
Right. Yeah. And I mean that, it's interesting because of course we live in this very like this society where everything is a commodity.
Yeah.
And so then if we
everything's disposable, one-time use. Yeah.
Right. And so if we want to do our art, we have to interact with that in some way. So like, in the past couple of years, right. Like, I always make an Instagram post for every gig. I always make, there's all this stuff that I have some level of like discomfort and comfort with, like to do that's outside of just playing music. And I'm not like, it's not like I know I need to do it if I want to do the thing that I really want to do, which is to be able to play for more people, to connect with more people. I love traveling. I love playing outside of town. Like I'm actually not really trying to play in Ann Arbor a ton because I'd rather just go and like be on the road for a couple of days, because then also there's no interruption. Like I think the thing I like about being out on the road is like, I've got a gig tonight. I'm going to be doing like teaching and like, hanging around in my office and then go to my gig and then come home. And then tomorrow I'm going to be doing teaching and hanging around in my office and then go do my next gig. Yeah. If I was on the road, I would drive to the gig, play the gig, go sleep, get up, drive to the next gig, play the gig. And it's like, what is there? There's just doing this thing.
Yeah.
No students, which I love teaching, no students, no trying to book the next gig. Like it's very focused on.
It's just you, your guitar, and the road. Yeah.
And my bandmates. And I love being in the band van.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
The whole experience is, to the point where like even if I'm playing locally, like if I'm playing in Detroit and I'm like, okay, we're just driving together. I'm gonna pick everybody up in the van because it's really annoying when you have a 4-piece band and you arrive in 4 vehicles just because it was like a 1 hour drive. Like That's an hour that we could have been hanging out together.
Yeah.
In the van. Like, why else are we playing music if we don't like to hang out with other musicians?
Yeah. And there really is a special connection when you play music with somebody. Even if you just one time sit down with somebody in an open mic, it's like we're friends forever now.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's true. That's why it's also so depressing when you stop being friends with musicians.
Yeah.
You know, that had happened before, where it's just like, you know, we don't align in certain ways, you know.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, damn, because playing music with people is it's very intimate. Like, you know, it's very vulnerable to play music with people.
Yeah, there's only one other activity I can think of right now where when you're engaged in it with another person, you just have this look of pure joy on both of your faces, and you're like, I can't believe we're doing this right now.
Yeah, right. I mean, I've actually said to people, I think playing music with people might be like more intimate than having sex with people.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, it's pretty intense at times, you know. So.
Yeah, and I have musician friends that I knew before we played together, and then at an open mic, I was like, oh, you know what? Let me jump up there and play drums with you guys. And so there was a guy on organ, a guy on bass. I was playing the drums, and from that moment on, we were just locked in. This is great. This is awesome. We should do this every week.
Yeah, that's the feeling. Yeah. It's really nice, you know, and it's really cool that we get to do that, you know. And I think that why I play the music that I play is that, like, you know, I could play classical guitar, but a lot of classical guitar repertoire is solo, you know, and I could play a lot of solo guitar gigs. You know, those can pay pretty well. I do them.
Yeah. Especially some of the upscale restaurants downtown. I'll pay you to play for 2-3 hours.
Yeah. And I mean, I always take those gigs when they fall into my lap, but I don't look for them because my real motivation for playing is the interaction.
Yeah. Not just to be the live background. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of always been about like that interaction with other people for me, I think, you know.
You're gonna hate me when you see me in your audience, because everyone's always like, hey man, are you not having a good time? I'm like, no, this is great. But I just stand there like this and stare at the musicians.
All right, I'll keep that in mind.
So yeah, I'm just living vicariously through you guys up there and just like, trying to take it all in visually and audibly. We're 47 minutes. That's more than I said I was going to keep you. So I'll make sure that people know that you got the shows coming up, and December 3rd, man, I'll pop in and say hi.
That's great. I'm excited to meet you in person.
Good luck with the music. Good luck with the students, and catch you soon.
All right. Catch you later.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in for this. I will see you next time. Don't forget to check out the show notes, and I love you guys. Mwah!